Hey everyone, welcome. Today I have my friend Jared, and we're going to be talking about what's at the root of control. So, maybe to help frame things for our audience, Jared, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself that'll kind of help our audience get an understanding of maybe what your background and lens will be when we're discussing control?
Sure, yeah. My name's Jared. Thank you for having me on, and good to be invited. Um, let's see. Background on me. I'm husband, 4 years. Hopefully one day be a father. Lived in Texas here for most of my life since I was 5. Um, Day to day, I am an engineer. I make sure the internet is available for people, and then I'd say outside of that, I like to do adventurous things: train, dive, hike. Very much a person of physicality, but also sometimes too much in my own brain, as I'm sure we're about to get into. So I guess that's the lens I'll be approaching this with, is just someone who's high functioning on the outside, but perhaps a little bit of a typhoon on the inside sometimes.
I like that. I like that. So then let's start there. So where in your life do you feel you're in the most control, and where do you struggle to let go?
Oh boy. I think I feel most in control of the normal day-to-day things. Um, you know, this is going to sound really lame, but it's like I get up at a good time every day. I show up to work, I walk the dog, I check the boxes, and by all sort of objective measures, things look in control. And it doesn't mean that things don't go wrong here and there, but so I say I feel in control. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of those things are very slippery. And there's also kind of this constant low hum in the back of my mind that at any point that rug will be pulled out from under me and that I'll lose control of all of those things. So there's a bit of a duality for me. I feel very in control while at the same time constantly looking over my shoulder for that moment when I won't be anymore.
Why do you think it's so important to be in control?
If you look at control as a duality, or at least for me, from my perspective, if you look at it as a duality, I see being in control is managing two things, one good and one bad. On one side is safety. It's important to be in control because it makes me feel safe. And on the other side is fear. Control is a mechanism by which I try to alleviate the things that I'm scared of. And if you wanted to drill further than that, I think that both of those things sort of funnel down into capability. Because I ask myself sometimes, why am I afraid of something that, to let's just say, most people would be trivial, you know? And then if I get on an airplane and I fly 14 hours across the Pacific Ocean, or I'm 110 feet down in the middle of a ripping current in the middle of Southeast Asia, I feel I feel safe. When objectively speaking, I'm not, or at least you do everything you can to be safe.
Right.
Um, I think I often ask myself why. Like, why am I afraid of a little rain at my house, but I can be halfway around the world and feel completely like myself? And I think it's capability. If you don't feel capable of handling something, at least for me, that manifests as gripping tighter and tighter. If I grip tight enough, if I hold on just enough, then I'll prevent the thing from happening that I'm afraid of, which really means, how do I keep putting off the thing I don't want to deal with because I don't feel capable of handling it?
I see.
I don't know if that answered the question, but
No, I mean it was open-ended by nature, but your response does make me think about how I'm manifesting control, and that does resonate a lot with me as well.
how do you feel like you're manifesting it?
I think it's a lot of the same thing, like coming from needing to feel safe, needing to feel like I can predict the outcome of what something is going to turn out to be. And I think so much I mean, everyone I think is maybe running into this challenge lately, but there's constantly trying to control the aspect of time.
Hmm.
How much time do I have? And trying to control, okay, this time is going towards work, but then these are going towards my hobbies. And then this is how much time social media sucks up from me. And I think there's this idea that, at least for me, that the control is definitely stemming from some sense of anxiety and unease in terms of how I'm experiencing the world, and a desire to set the path onto the one that feels like it will make me the least anxious. And I think that's kind of, it does it seem a little bit paradoxical, but I think that that kind of summarizes how I feel about it.
I resonate with that. It's funny because you mentioned social media. That's just one of the many things that most people fairly want to have control over their life, and I'd even take that a little bit higher and say just phone or device use in general. It doesn't have to be social media. Um, the first thing that came to my mind is, is are you controlling that thing or is it controlling you? As trite
Yes.
as that sounds. Um, I had a realization the other day, actually, that a lot of the things where I feel I don't have as much control could be urges, whether it's like, say, the urge to have a beer when I come home, the urge to get off that meeting at work and go have a snack. Um, someone asks me to deliver, like someone says, "Hey, I need this document created by the end of the day for whatever reason," and it stresses me out. I wasn't ready for that. And then I go, I take a bathroom break and I go and I end up scrolling through my phone on YouTube for 10 minutes, way more than I expected. And I'm like, I had this realization that, like, okay, these are all just urges. And at the root of these urges, what is this? It's like, oh, I'm finding ways to soothe myself.
Mm,
I need
yeah.
to feel soothed. I need to feel peace. And this was only a recent thing, so I can't say I've solved for this, but I started looking at these like little habits that I've built up that aren't even really destructive. Like I mentioned snacking, right? For me, that's going and getting a handful of blueberries. Most people would love that as to be like your snacking choice versus, pita chips or whatever. But it's like, why do I always feel the need to do this?
Mm,
And, what does that have to do with control? For folks out there, it's like these things that you feel like you don't have control over. There's a lot of people will say this about addiction and rehab, is like there's always something more there that's driving that behavior. It's not always just about the substance. And in many cases, it might not even be about the substance at all.
like it
Or
could be about like an emotion or a feeling that you're patching in some way.
100%, or something you're running away from. And
Mm,
I use the example, I said, like, this is silly, but someone asks for a document or I need to send this email. It's not something I was expecting to do that day. And if I really sat down to work on it, what's it going to do? It's going to take me 5 extra minutes, to answer this or to sign this thing. But because I wasn't planning on it and I
yep.
don't feel capable of handling it in the moment, what do? You know, I go read about the latest baseball game or something because it makes me feel good. I don't know, maybe in a way it makes me feel in control. Even though saying that out loud, it sounds crazy because it's like, well, are you really, dude?
Yeah, maybe it's the simple act of maybe just resisting doing the thing feels like exerting some sense of control where you may not have it otherwise.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point about resistance, the act of doing something. So I mentioned in my introduction, which I feel silly about, but I was like, I'm a I like things like physical. Like I feel like I'm a person of physicality, and that can mean a lot of different things to different people. But for me, the things I really, really enjoy are mostly, for me, it's like outdoorsy things. You know, I work as a diver, so I'm in the lake, wet, cold, and it's like the place I feel the most alive. If I'm out with a weight vest on a hike for 2 hours, it's like I feel like myself. My brain turns off in those scenarios. So for everybody, that's going to look a little bit different. But I like what you said about the act of doing something makes you feel in control. And to go back to your original question of what do you feel the most in control of? I mean, in some ways, it's those habits, it's those training habits. I feel the most in control because I feel both obligated to do them, but I also, once you kind of get over that 5-10 minute hurdle in a workout where you want to go home, I love it. It's like it's the perfect release for everything.
Do you think there's a sense of almost a paradox where you enjoy these outdoor activities almost specifically because it lets you not have to exert control over every single thing versus maybe the day job kind of requiring more of that active part of your brain to engage in control?
100%. You know, when you're underwater, you can overthink, and many people do, and you can get sucked into, well, where's my gear? Oh, did I put enough air in? Oh, let me check my gauge. Oh, you can go down that spiral. And a lot of newer divers, I'll use this as the example I have the most perspective on. A lot of people will. And that's something that grows out of you the more time you spend underwater as you start to relax. And it is paradoxical because if you're too relaxed, you know, that's when issues can crop up too, because there are things you need to be watching, but you don't have to grip it so hard. And it takes the fun out of the act. There's no point in the activity if you're just gripping it so tightly that you're staring at
Mm,
your dive watch for an hour. Like you can do that at your house.
fine. Do you think
So
when you're exist
it is these activities where like you're almost at the mercy of the environment where you're like, ah, yeah, this is great.
and it's almost not something you could control even if you wanted to?
Yeah. At some point, it's just you have to let go. There's no other option.
Do you think that when you are exerting that control, whether it's, more so on the extracurricular activities or even in your day job or even just day to day in life, when you exert or have to maybe maybe more so the opposite when you're not able to put in some level of control over something, do you manifest that feeling in your body in any way? Like, do you experience something that lets you know, oh, I'm not feeling in control of this anymore?
That's a really good question. In a in a positive or negative way.
I think it could be either. I mean, you could be gleeful about it, but you could also be very anxious about it. And, I'll give you an example. Like, probably for me, when I am in a specifically anxious situation and I feel like I cannot exert control, or I'm now all of a sudden aware I need to control the situation, it's usually because I'm starting to get like those butterflies in my stomach or something. And I'm starting to feel a little nauseous or a little anxious in my stomach. And that tells me like I need to make an adjustment, whether it's to remove myself from the situation or take a pause or whatever the reaction may be, but that there is something happening physiologically that I need to take a second and think about.
I think for me, it's a tightness.
Mm.
It's like a restrictive feeling. It's not painful or uh, it's hard to explain, but a lot of people will talk about having tunnel vision,
Hmm.
especially in like a moment of focus. That could be actual danger, like you do have to take some action either for yourself or for somebody,
Right.
or if you're just, something has stressed you out or you're anxious. I get that. I do get a little bit of that tunnel vision, but it also it's in the body. It's like a tightening of every single muscle. And at the same time, a lot of really nervous energy that, for me, my wife hates it that I basically tap my feet and my hands to everything. I have a lot of like angstiness, and that just
Mm.
10x's in that moment. So it's like this similar a tightness of everything, but also like I feel the tremor is a little bit of an exaggeration, but like it's almost like a tremor. There's a constant frequency
There's a
that I feel.
restlessness to
Yeah,
it.
thank you. I'm like, I get tremors. Be like, dude, you need to go to a doctor. No, restlessness is the way to say it. Yeah.
Interesting. I relate to that because I think that, especially with my anxiety, I know that I tend to feel very restless, and it doesn't maybe manifest in like maybe a specific limb like twitching, but it's definitely results in, and I think I've mentioned this in a prior episode, but sometimes I just get up and start cleaning. And it's because I'm
Mm.
feeling restless. There's this energy kind of starting to pull up in me that I need to use and get out of me somehow. And it tends to end up manifesting as I'm going to pick up the vacuum and just clean really quickly, or wipe down this counter, or if the dishes are there, I'll wash them. Um yeah.
I do the exact same thing. It's not always cleaning. If actually that feel like that make the house look nicer if that's what it was. But it's the same thing. I mean, God, folding clothes, shoot at work, checking your email for the 50th time, even though you know nothing has come in and you're an inbox zero guy. So, like, you would know if there was an email. You
You
don't
would
need to
know.
look at the tab again.
No.
Um, Gosh, thinking of the contractor for your house that you need to call that you could wait till next week, but you don't really want to work on the thing that you should be doing, so you make that call anyway because it makes you feel productive that you did the thing you needed to do, but really could have waited.
Almost sounds like, these microtransactions of control in the day to day.
Yep, all the time, all the time.
So, is there maybe a specific moment you can think of, maybe recently, where you realized you were trying to control maybe an impossible situation, or a situation where you were able to maybe exert that control and only on reflection kind of maybe thought, maybe I didn't need to do that?
I mean, the obvious answer for me is we just moved.
Mm.
And for anyone who's moved, whether you're buying a house, renting a house, apartment, whatever, everyone ever will say that's not fun. And it's hard to say that I actually, it's probably not a good example. It's just the most recent example because I do feel like I actually navigated it fairly well for for what I'm capable of doing.
Hmm.
I very, very much tried to one day at a time, one thing at a time, move this box, call this vendor, that can wait till tomorrow. It was very, very stressful still, but I tried to find the balance. staying on top of things while also realizing you can't do it all in one day, whether it's moving or getting the HVAC guy to come check this, or one day you're dedicated to, if anybody's closed on a house before, the amount of things you have to sign is an exercise in and of itself.
Mm,
And so you just have to go, all right, you know what? Today's for signing the papers. Now I'm going to go home. I'll do the rest tomorrow. I did the thing.
you did the thing.
Yeah. And I think the only reason I was able to navigate that uh, without losing it is because I knew it was coming. And I sort of
Oh,
made that a goal of, like, part of the goal is obviously to move and have things go smoothly, but some of it for me personally was like, try to not enjoy it so much as just try to live that experience. Don't try to grip it so tightly. Just live the experience. It'll be over. You'll be settled again. And I actually
what?
kept telling myself that.
Hmm. Maybe besides that kind of affirmation, was there anything else that helped you navigate going through that change and kind of making sure that you felt that you had the control you needed to feel comfortable?
Support of my wife and family. And that's not going to surprise, I think, many people to say, the people around you. So I wasn't going through it alone. And I want to be clear too, we're talking about moving here. This isn't a traumatic experience by any stretch. There's just a lot going on. But she handles these things much differently than me and is much more carefree. Now, there are some things where she might control a little more than me. Everybody's got their stuff. But in this case, she's much more carefree. And so I just look to her and I'm like, yeah, I mean, if she's fine, there's no reason that I should be stressed about this. And, knowing that I have a good relationship with my in laws and they live here. So knowing that at the end of the day, too, we have extended family here.
So kind of extending and relying on your kind of built-in support group
Mm-hmm.
to handle going through that transition.
100%. Yeah, the community, I'm lucky that, I'm married and I have some family here, but not everybody necessarily can say that. And I think with control, but also with any thing that you might talk about right on this show, having a support group, friends, um, dare I say, coworkers in some cases, or a like-minded group of people. Like, for me, the dive staff where I work, it's like they're both friends, family, and coworkers, all wrapped into one. Having those communities, those safe places to go for people that will take care of you or will just hear what it is you have to say is so important. And I feel for younger generations than us, not to say that we're too old, but I feel for younger generations who are missing out on that because so much of their communities are on.
Yeah, you have a point. I mean, I don't think I had really understood myself that it's not necessarily an X factor to have that in-person like community, but it definitely builds a different set of skills in a different way than maybe how Gen Z is being exposed to those types of things. And even more so to a degree, Gen Alpha as they grow up, it will be yet another different scheme for them, especially with AI becoming a lot more prevalent probably for their formative years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of feeling this way, but the world feels out of control. And the more and more we hyper focus online, following the news, looking at social media, it's just, yeah, you got to step away because you can't control any of that.
Yeah,
And I hear
yeah.
myself say that, and then I hear the critics in the background saying, like, well, you can't be complacent. Nothing, you can't change the world or your situation if you don't act, and that's true. Being informed is important. But you have to remember the spheres of control. It's like it starts with yourself, and then it starts with the small group around you, your family, maybe some of your close friends. And you have to work your way out to where you can then say, hey, I'm going to go run for mayor and try to influence politics or something like that. You can't start out there.
I mean, even when you go out there, the level of impact and influence that you can exert to even have some semblance of control decreases the more and more layers that you go out. Like, you have probably the most obviously control of yourself, but then as you go out to your family and friends, like, it's kind of an exponential drop off, I would imagine. Like, you're having less and less, direct control. There's influence. And that's an interesting distinction to talk about. Like, having control over a situation is very different than having the ability to influence. And I
Hmm.
think what happens is when you're at the me level, it's definitely control. And then it's kind of, as it goes further out to those layers, especially once you get to your outside environment, it becomes more about influence. And it's more about the sum of everyone's influence than maybe a single person's control.
It makes me I thought about this leading into this at the risk of being Ryan Holiday pilled. Um, it, it, you can control what is within your control, and you have to let go of the rest. Right? That's the core of what he writes about in his philosophy. And there's been a lot of back and forth over Stoic philosophy and his presentation of it. So I don't want to even get into that. But I do think that the core of the argument of the philosophy is what is within your control and what is without. And in a situation, if you could say, all I can do is this, then as best you can, that's where you start. And then, like you said, anything after that is influence. I can control my response to this, but I don't know what that person's going to say. I don't know what the next email I'm going to get is. I don't know what the student's going to do underwater. I can try to influence that situation as best I can. I can put guardrails up. I can prepare. I think that's where I sort of fall into a trap is I think I over prepare sometimes.
Mm.
But yet at the end of the day, like you can only influence. You have to respond sometimes just to what's thrown at you. So regardless of what you think of him and that sort of that presentation of the philosophy, I do think that that's a very powerful thing.
I mean, it resonates a lot with one of our favorite topics, which is the Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And, you know, Frodo asks
I know
Gandalf
exactly where you're going with
in the
this.
first film, he obviously wished the ring never came to him, that none of this had ever happened. And Gandalf's response was, so do all those who come to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
I mean, that's the end of the podcast right there. What more do you want? What could I possibly add?
I mean, I truly try to live by that, and I have to, because I think with my sense of control that I want to consistently exert over the things around me comes from, I mentioned, mostly that lack of safety growing up. And it means that even in situations where I shouldn't be trying to control everything, I am constantly, because that's how I was essentially conditioned from a young age to constantly try to control the various variables around me. And hearing that, listening to that quote makes me think and reminds me that, of course, I wish that I could do X, Y, and Z, but it's not always possible. It's not always feasible. And I do have to be mindful about instead thinking about what I can do with the things that I can control. Because I cannot control all of it.
How do you think you've managed that since you've had that realization that you're controlling all of these variables because you didn't feel safe when you were younger? And you recognize that, which is powerful in and of itself. How have you tried to adjust with that knowledge?
I think it took a while to accept it. So I think what I would probably say is first I run through stages of denial. Um, I didn't think it was that big of a problem, if I'm being honest. Not that it wasn't manifesting in parts of my life that were clearly telling me the opposite,
Mhm.
but I didn't think it was that big of a deal because it had always served me incredibly well. I have gotten to where I've gotten to in my career. I have been able to overcome all this adversity because of being able to exert control. And so to hear that it was something that was holding me back and it was something that was maybe in the moment a valuable tool, but not a tool that serves me anymore was very hard to hear at first. And I think it took some time, but I think understanding how much of it was making me unnecessarily anxious was a starting point because I initially started therapy 4 years ago for anxiety. And I discovered a whole myriad of other things as a result. But it started simple. It started with I would like to understand and manage my anxiety,
Mhm.
only to come and realize that I am, in many cases, manifesting that anxiety
Mm.
because I am trying to control everything. And so after the denial stage, I guess, I essentially had to understand the small little micro actions I was taking in my day to day that were reinforcing that habit. And I mean, 4 years is not enough to undo 30 plus years of conditioning like that. So there's still more to go. But I think probably one of the biggest things I'll try to do now is listen to my body. I will, if I get those butterflies, I'm stopping and I'm reevaluating, okay, what's going on here? If I feel that hint of frustration when I'm maybe in a meeting and things aren't going the way I expected them to, and I'm starting to get frustrated, I'll pause and I'll try to understand, okay, where is this coming from? And is this me trying to expect too much for this situation, trying to exert too much control over a situation and, frankly, other people that I don't have control over? And even that in itself is an interesting concept of thinking, especially when you're a leader and a manager. It's like, some sense of power dynamic is there. And of course, I don't utilize that in a way that would be irresponsible, but it is there whether or not I choose to use it or not. Just because I say something and I happen to have some power and authority in a situation will mean my words will be interpreted differently. And I have
Mhm.
to remember that responsibility that I have. So I think it has taken time and I've come around to it and I try to pause as much, listen to my body, listen to my emotions, but I'm also trying to fill in those moments when I feel like I'm feeling restless. Maybe I'm channeling it in different ways. So, we've talked about this. I try to do more exercise, whether it's walks, strength training, cardio, and that kind of gets some of that anxious energy out of me, and that helps a lot. To be fair, it helps a lot, as well as ongoing therapy, as well as like ongoing medications that kind of help balance my moods, and I think that has helped. It's still something that's, I think, a natural instinct for me to jump towards, but at least I have enough strategies and tools from the work I've done over the last 4 years since I've understood this is a challenge of mine to at least cause a double check and a checks and balances on when I'm kind of going through that emotion and gut check. Okay, this is maybe you need to take a second.
What I hear in that story is you, after your awareness, of, of what it is, that how this manifests, where it's coming from. You took some modicum of control, but in a good way, because you said,
Yeah.
you're very good about seeing your emotions and your responses to situations and not passing judgments on them, and then saying, okay, this thing is happening. And you might not think about it this way, but saying, what can I do? Well, I can go for a walk. I can, you know, I can write in this journal. I can go have this conversation with this person. Or, hey, my therapist isn't available right now, but I'll at least reach out, maybe get on the schedule, because I need to sit down for a conversation. Like, you're asking, what can I do? I think that's a healthy version of control, because you're not avoiding the emotion or the behavior. You're not judging it. You're sort of, I don't know, passing through it. Like, yep, this is happening. And what I can do about it is this. And so that's what I'll do. And in some ways, that alone is soothing.
It is, and it's. I appreciate you saying that. I process that emotion, and I ask myself, what can I do? But if I'm being completely honest, and I don't want to misrepresent it in any way, I was not doing that initially. I would my way of managing my anxiety was to basically avoid. Avoidance was my go-to tactic, and it meant that I could not identify my emotions, let alone think about what I could do to soothe myself. These are all tools and techniques and strategies that I've built with my therapist. And together we've done some pretty amazing work. And I give her credit where credit is due. I would not have been able to even go through processing that if I hadn't worked with her to get those tools.
Yeah, you've come a long way.
I have. And I think I'm even thinking about how control overlaps. And for me, I mentioned kind of came from a very early time in my life, but I'm kind of curious how control maybe shows up for you with maybe other areas of your life, whether it's maybe like is it something that you see more in leadership? Is it something you see more, amongst like maybe more of a parent child relationship, or maybe anywhere else in your community? Maybe you mentioned diving, if it's something that's manifests more between that teacher student relationship, because we talked about power dynamics that I have as a manager. I'm kind of curious to see how that manifests for you, if there's other similar environments.
I'll say, from my perspective, it doesn't really show up in relationships with people, which I say that, saying I think that I'm fortunate in that at least, again, from my perspective, I don't see it there. Where I see it show up is in where I feel deficient. A
Hmm.
lot of it is in things that I do, or like things that I do with work, for example, or certain knowledge that I think that I should have, or certain tasks that I should be performing. A good example would be if I recently became a homeowner. Okay, well, what are the things that I'm supposed to do? I don't I don't know. No one's telling me what to do. I feel out of control. That's when the cycle starts. I'm probably not doing a good job of explaining this, but like, with friends, with coworkers, with Kimberly, my wife, it's like I feel good about flexing into different social roles or dynamics, kind of just as at whatever the situation is. But when I mentioned capability sort of at the start of the conversation, I've realized that I've often asked myself, like, what about my childhood if anything, led me to some of these behaviors. And I have to
Mm.
thank you for that, actually, because talking to you has led me to ask those questions. And I want to give my parents a little bit of credit before I say the next thing, which is I don't really think that they did anything necessarily wrong. Like, I didn't have an abusive upbringing. My parents weren't rich, but had money and food on the table and gifts at Christmas. You know, I look back and I go like, man, like really, it was pretty solid. I felt loved and all of it. I'm like, what was it? The only thing I can think of, as silly as this sounds, is, you know, my parents, I think, did the classic thing that they do to a lot of firstborns, where they sort of inadvertently put this checklist in front of you and they say, do
Mm.
this, do this, do this, do this. And if you do, X will happen. And somehow you're supposed to want the end result. And it, you know, just do this and this and you'll get it. And then like that's sort of the name of the game, like play the game. And so that's what I did. And when I finally went out on my own, quote unquote, like I'm 18, I go to college, right? I didn't know how to do laundry. My mom dressed me till I was in 7th grade. Like, I was well taken care of, almost to a point where there were just basic basic living, just being a human. That I'm like, I don't really, no one told me how to do this, and no one's giving me the checklist. So, like, what am I supposed to do? I have to figure this out. I don't want to have to figure this out. I want to go smoke weed and play Madden. Like, this sounds silly, but this is the only thing I could think of. I remember, you know, asking my dad multiple times, like, Dad, like, can I like come mow the lawn with you? Which is a really silly thing. Anybody who had chores as a child is like, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I'm like, but I wanted to know how to do these things. And I always got told no. And so I've learned, especially as I've gotten older, and the things that I'm responsible for have increased, whether that be people or just things. You know, you go from renting a place to owning a place. It's like, well, now you're responsible, dude. Like, if something breaks, you got to fix it. I've realized how incapable I feel. And that's when I feel it the most, that I don't have control. And I hate that feeling so much that my anxiety stems from trying to prepare and prepare and prepare and prevent all of the things I don't want to happen, because I know that when they do, I'm not going to know what to do, and I'm going to want to run home to my parents to fix it for me. The kid is still there.
Dang, that's a breakthrough right there. That's a breakthrough.
It feels like a sad story. It's like, you know,
No,
didn't have a
you know,
drug problem, didn't have this. It's like, no, it just, no one taught me how to fucking fix the plumbing, you know?
but here's the thing. We've talked about this before too, but you know, you could have, you know, the cookie cutter Hallmark family and
Mm-hmm.
grown up in the most ideal situation. But just because something was modeled for you doesn't mean it was always comprehensive. And just because in my situation, more so things were modeled for me that I shouldn't do, but that didn't mean automatically I know what I should do now. Because the opposite doesn't necessarily mean the truth. Because there is missing information, missing context. And we also, you know, both of us have parents that were in the boomer generation, and they had their own challenges that they were experiencing, and the world looked drastically different for them and their coping strategies, and even stereotypes on, you know, who's responsible for doing laundry has changed. So to be fair, a
I got
lot
so
has
much crap for
changed.
that. Dude, just pour the detergent in the machine. Like, you'll be all right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to kind of reflect on this idea that these things that I don't know is what makes me anxious and makes me feel out of control.
And makes me grip tighter.
It's Isn't that a conundrum? The more you hold on to, the more challenging things become because it's impossible to rein in everything.
The thought pattern that I still haven't learned to shake, but I'll say learned to recognize is I'll be having one of those episodes where I'm, even if I can't name what I'm afraid of, or this event that I'm catastrophizing, really, really good at catastrophizing. Couldn't write you a great fictional novel, but I could write you a great catastrophe story. And I'll recognize I'm catastrophizing, and I'll tell myself, like, hey, I won't even say let it go. I was just like, hey man, like, sure, something could go wrong or like could be bad, but you'll be okay. Like, you, I don't say this to myself, but sort of like you might get hurt. You might have to do something difficult. You might have to have a conversation you don't want to have, but like you'll be okay. And the thought pattern that pops into my head right there is it's like the devil on my shoulder says, yeah, you will, but if you let yourself think that, it'll be 10 times worse.
Ooh.
And it's like I don't even allow myself to soothe myself, if that makes sense. It's like I'm trying
Yeah.
to think, and I guess in some ways you can say you can't think your way through every problem. And I'm trying to think my way through it, and like, yeah, man, you'll be okay. Like, yeah, this sucks, whatever this is, but you're gonna get through it. You're gonna wake up tomorrow and like the coffee's gonna be hot. It's gonna be fine. I'm like, but if you let yourself think that, you're gonna miss something, and it's gonna be 10 times worse. And I'm learning. I have to learn how to get rid of that thought pattern.
Where do you think that one comes from?
Oh man, how much time do we have to pause? I haven't. I don't know if I've ever asked myself that question. The only answer I can give you off the top of my head is like just just being the scared child. It's just fear. That's what it is. I'm afraid that I'm afraid if I don't take the action, whatever it is I think I should be doing to solve
Hmm.
this problem, that I'll get found out. Someone will say, like, you didn't check the box, you failed. And that's silly. I mean, I saying it out loud, I'm like, almost want to laugh at myself. I'm like, I know that that's ridiculous, but that's where it comes from.
I mean, these things, these beliefs that sit with us that come from our childhood are, I mean, yeah, maybe they are ridiculous, but to our inner children, they're very real. They're very real, scary challenges. And it's not something that they can easily rationalize. And I think about it because the way I was able to kind of go through those moments as well where I'm feeling like I don't know if I could do this is or if I'm anxious about succeeding at XYZ. I've worked on trying to understand and remember that I have skills. I have the qualifications I need to succeed at this point in my life. I have a job and built a community around myself to be successful. Like I have, whether it's not the tools directly that I have the community around me to succeed. And like those things help me at least reframe some of that devil's advocate that maybe is telling me, yeah, well, what if you don't have it all figured out? But it's easy to say that, and at the end of the day, you're just trying to be louder than that devil's advocate because he's still there screaming at you too.
Yeah, there's a quote I like. that's something along the lines of the thing that you want is on the other side of the conversation you're avoiding. Or it doesn't
Mm,
even have to be a conversation, it could be the thing. The thing that you want, the life that you want to live, put whatever the reward is, it doesn't matter, is on the other side of the thing you're avoiding. And that's not always it's a very simple heuristic, but it works sometimes for me in those moments. If I can bring myself to think that is like the peace you're looking for, the the soothing that you want, it's on the thing that you're avoiding to do. And it can be as simple as, just, hey, dude, like put your phone down and I don't know. Instead, how about you go sit and have a conversation with your wife? Why don't you go pet the dog? It it doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just, what are you avoiding? If this thing happens and you need to take care of it, um, again, going back to say, well, what can I do? Well, I can make this phone call. So let me do that. And you make the phone call and you sort of kick off that domino effect. You get some other people involved, you get some answers, you get some advice. And then all of a sudden you start to realize, like, one, this thing really, it wasn't that bad. And two, I've got like 5 people in my corner now to help me figure this out. My buddy's coming over because he knows how to do this.
mm.
This is going to be great. We'll get this done in 10 minutes and then we'll go have dinner. And yeah, I get it. It depends on the scale of the problem or the thing that you're sort of navigating, but it's like the other thing I always remind myself is, to our brains, things are usually not quite as good as we sometimes perceive them to be, which sounds cynical. But the flip side of that is, things are typically not as bad as we perceive them to be. And again, taking the good side and recognizing that that doesn't sound fun, I also remind myself that when I'm kind of in the thick of it, is like, it's probably not as bad as you think that it is. And it's just, how do I get out of the thought pattern and then go, okay, what can I do about this? And then just take the first step. Don't worry about the next 5. Just take the first. Build the momentum.
I like thinking about it that way. But one thought just occurred to me too, because I kind of think about in these moments when you're trying to exert this control. I'll give you an example. Like it often feels like these moments where your like nervous system is being activated and you're either
Yeah.
going into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I
Mm.
think what tends to happen for me,
What is fawn?
fawn is, I'm gonna butcher the official like definition of it, but it's very much kind of placating to whatever's happening around you and kind of
Mm.
receding a little bit. It's not quite the same as freeze, but it's similar to freeze. But for me, in those moments, I tend to freeze. I tend to almost get overwhelmed with the scenarios I am thinking through, with the anxiety that's kind of rushing through. And that's when I find myself picking up my phone, scrolling Instagram, and numbing a little bit. And so when you say that you know, go do the thing and bring in community and support to help you go do the thing, it's almost as if you're kind of doing the fight reaction where you're like, well, I'm just going to go handle it and I'm going to go get it done.
Yeah, I would say definitely the way I presented that sounded that way. If it was being honest, I think I tend to be flight.
Okay.
And when I'm at my best, that's where those responses come from. I can stop the thought pattern, I can slow the anxiety, and then I can actually allow myself to go, okay, like, what can I control? What can I do? Even if it's just my response to it, how I respond, how I, you know, not necessarily doing something, but just how do I go and soothe myself, right? Because you can choose
Mm,
very different paths to how you sort of numb or process is the better word there. But I think I'm more of a flight. My initial reaction is to avoid. And so if I can get to the state where I can build momentum towards something, then I've done something right. Not
mm,
fight. I think there is a distinction. I agree. But I'm too procedural for that. Fighting isn't in my nature. It's avoid. If I go after something, it's because I have had time to be a little bit more methodical.
got it. Well, as we've kind of reflected on control from the variety of angles, I'll ask you the question. So, at the root of control, what is there for you?
I suppose it's the dual-sided coin, safety and fear. And if I had to give you one answer, maybe we could say capability.
Hmm.
For
I
me,
got I got three.
the root of control is do I believe that I'm capable or not?
That makes sense. I'd say at the root of control for me, I would have initially probably said safety, but thinking about where really my need for control comes from, I do think that at the root of control is anxiety for
Mm.
me, because I think that is ultimately the root cause. Although you could easily say that a need for safety is what causes the anxiety. So I suppose you would say safety and anxiety.
We could go ad infinitum.
Probably. Well, I want to thank you for your time today, Jared. I really appreciate you chatting with us about control. And for our audience listening, if you'd like Jared to come back and chat over any topics, feel free to add them in the comments.
Oh boy,
And Jared,
be
have a
nice.
good week. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was great. Thanks so
Of
much.
course. Awesome.